ever have one of those moments at work where everything just clicks? The whole team is in sync, ideas are flowing, and you actually enjoy what you're doing? That feeling is rare, but when it happens, it's incredible. Today, we're talking all about teamwork, what makes it work, what breaks it, and how to be the kind of person that makes a team genuinely better. I'm Emma, and with me as always is Jake. Jake, good to have you here.
Always happy to be here, Emma. And that intro got me thinking immediately because yes, I know exactly that feeling. And I also know the opposite feeling, where everything is friction and you're dreading every meeting. Both are real and both are worth talking about today.
Most people listening have experienced both sides, the dream team and the team that makes you want to quit. So let's start with something fundamental. Why do we even work in teams? Couldn't talented individuals just handle things alone?
On the surface, fewer people seem simpler, but no single person has every skill, every perspective, every strength needed for complex problems. Teams exist because meaningful challenges are simply too layered for one person alone. That's the honest truth of it.
And something interesting happens when the right people come together, something beyond just combining individual skills. Some people call it synergy. That idea that the group produces something greater than what each person could contribute separately. 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thinking.
And synergy isn't just a trendy boardroom word, it's real. When a creative mind works alongside an analytical one, they don't just add their strengths, they multiply them. The creative person pushes boundaries, the analytical person stress tests ideas, and what comes out is something neither would have reached alone.
Which brings me to something important. You don't want a team full of identical people. You want diversity, and not just demographic diversity, though that absolutely matters. I mean diversity of thought, of approach, of personality. Cognitive diversity, some researchers call it.
Different ways of processing problems. Some people zoom out and see the big picture. Others zoom in and catch every detail. Some are fast and decisive. Others are careful and thorough. A well-rounded team genuinely needs all of those types working together, even when it creates friction.
And that friction is worth addressing directly, because those different types can clash. The fast-moving person gets frustrated with the cautious one. The big-picture thinker dismisses the detail person as being too in the weeds, meaning too focused on small things and losing the broader view. Diversity is an asset, but only if the team manages those differences well.
Which is exactly why communication is everything. It's the thread holding all of it together. If people can't talk openly and honestly, diversity just becomes conflict. But when real dialogue happens, those differences become the team's biggest strength rather than its biggest problem.
So let's dig into communication. What does good team communication actually look like in practice? Not on a motivational poster, in real, day-to-day team life.
It starts with honesty, not brutal honesty. There's a real difference between being direct and being harsh, but a genuine willingness to say what you think, raise concerns early, share ideas even when you're unsure about them. That openness has to be cultivated, meaning deliberately grown over time, not assumed to just appear naturally.
And cultivating that openness connects to something researchers call psychological safety, the sense that you can speak up, take risks, share half-formed ideas, even make mistakes without being judged or embarrassed. When that's present, teams perform dramatically better. When it's absent, even talented teams underperform.
Google studied this extensively. Project Aristotle, it was called. They analyzed hundreds of internal teams, expecting talent or strategy to be the key factor. But the #1 predictor of high performance was psychological safety. Teams where people felt safe being honest were consistently the best teams. Full stop.
Which tells us that environment matters more than talent alone. You can have incredibly skilled people, but if they are afraid to speak up, hiding mistakes, guarding ideas, you're getting a fraction of what they're capable of. Fear is extraordinarily costly in a team setting.
And it spreads invisibly. One person afraid to share a concern stays quiet. Someone else notices the silence and pulls back too. Gradually, the whole team becomes guarded without anyone consciously deciding to be. That's why creating safety has to be active and intentional, not passive.
Much of that responsibility falls on whoever's leading the team. The leader sets the tone for everything. If they're open, willing to admit mistakes, genuinely curious about others' opinions, that gives everyone permission to do the same. But a defensive, controlling leader creates that culture too, and it spreads just as fast.
The best leaders I've worked with listened more than they talked. They asked questions instead of always providing answers. They gave people real autonomy, genuine freedom and trust to work their own way, rather than micromanaging every step. And that trust changed everything about how the team functioned.
Micromanaging is such a trust killer. When someone hovers over every detail, what it communicates, even unintentionally, is, "I don't trust you." And when someone feels distrusted, their motivation drops fast. It creates a cycle that's genuinely hard to break without someone consciously deciding to let go.
And it's a vicious cycle. The more the leader micromanages, the more the team member hesitates. The leader sees that hesitancy and micromanages more. Breaking it requires the leader to extend trust before it fully feels safe, which takes real courage, honestly.
Someone has to go first, and in a leadership position, that's you. You extend trust, the team member rises to meet it, and over time that trust becomes genuinely mutual. The investment pays back enormously in speed, creativity, and team morale.
Because a team that trusts their leader and trusts each other moves so much faster. Less second-guessing, less political maneuvering. The energy that would have gone into protecting yourself goes into actually doing the work. That's when teams start achieving things that genuinely surprise people.
Let's talk about conflict, because every team faces it eventually. No matter how strong the communication, people will disagree. And how a team handles those moments says everything about its health. Here's something worth saying up front. Conflict isn't inherently bad.
A team with zero conflict should actually worry a little. It might mean people are suppressing honest opinions to keep the peace. That's groupthink, where everyone agrees to avoid discomfort, and it leads to genuinely poor decisions. The unvoiced doubts don't disappear. They grow quietly until they surface at the worst possible moment.
Usually right before a deadline, when pressure is highest and you absolutely cannot afford a surprise problem that someone saw coming weeks ago but never mentioned. The cost of avoiding conflict early is always paid later, and with interest, as they say.
So the goal isn't no conflict, it's constructive conflict. Disagreements focused on ideas and approaches rather than people and egos, about what's right rather than who's right. Keeping conversations in that zone requires real skill, but it's learnable, and it makes disagreements genuinely productive rather than draining.
And staying constructive requires separating the idea from the person. If I challenge your suggestion, I'm engaging with the idea, not attacking you. That sounds straightforward, but when people feel invested in their thinking, it gets complicated fast. The emotional brain hears criticism of an idea as criticism of the person who had it.
So you have to slow down deliberately. When you feel defenses rising, that's exactly the moment to pause rather than respond immediately. Ask questions instead of making statements. "Help me understand how you see this working," lands completely differently than "that won't work." One invites dialogue, the other closes it down.
And sometimes you ask that question and realize the other person has thought of something you completely missed, which isn't a defeat. That's the team functioning exactly as it should. The best outcome in any disagreement isn't that your idea wins, it's that the best idea wins. That mindset shift matters enormously.
Moving from "I want to be right" to "we want to get this right." The we over I shift. It sounds simple stated plainly, but living it consistently under pressure is genuinely hard. It's something you practice consciously, over and over, until it starts feeling natural rather than forced.
Let's shift to something that's become hugely relevant recently: remote and hybrid teamwork. So many people now work with colleagues they've never met in person, across different time zones, sometimes different continents. What does that do to team dynamics?
It removes what you might call ambient connection, those informal, spontaneous interactions that build familiarity naturally when you share a physical space. The quick chat before a meeting, reading someone's expression across a table, all of that disappears remotely, and you don't realize how much relational work those small moments were doing until they're gone.
And you have to replace them deliberately. Remote teams must be intentional about things that previously happened automatically. Virtual coffee chats, informal check-ins, making space for personal conversation before diving into business, these feel slightly forced initially, but they genuinely add up and build real connection over time.
And remote work forces communication discipline that's actually valuable. When you can't walk to someone's desk, you must be more explicit and precise in writing. You can't rely on tone or facial expression to carry meaning. The words do more work. And that habit, being clearer from the start, transfers back when you're working in person too.
Now let's talk about roles and responsibilities, because unclear roles cause enormous problems that teams often don't connect to the actual source. When responsibilities aren't defined, things fall through the cracks, meaning important tasks get missed because everyone assumed someone else was handling them.
The classic "I thought you were doing it" situation. So avoidable with one conversation at the start. Who owns what the deadline is, what success looks like. Teams skip that conversation because everything seems obvious initially. Then they pay for it halfway through when it becomes clear nothing was as obvious as everyone assumed.
And connected to that is accountability, genuinely owning your role, your decisions, your outcomes. Not just the successes, but the failures too. Real accountability isn't about blame when things go wrong. It's about ownership, caring enough about the shared goal to take honest responsibility for your part in it.
And accountability lives or dies with trust. When teammates know they can count on you, that when you commit to something, you follow through, that reliability becomes a form of trust that makes everything flow. When someone consistently doesn't deliver, the burden shifts, resentment builds quietly, and team cohesion starts cracking from the inside.
Cohesion meaning how well a group holds together, how connected and unified they feel. And it is fragile. It takes consistent effort from everyone. One person genuinely disengaged can affect the whole group's morale significantly. Not always the least skilled person either. Sometimes someone very capable who feels undervalued or misplaced.
Which is why good teammates and leaders pay attention to the person, not just the performance. If someone seems checked out, the human response is to ask directly, "How are you doing? Is something about this role not working for you?" People respond powerfully to being genuinely seen. It's one of the simplest and most underused management tools there is.
People respond to being seen. I love that. And it connects to something I think is deeply underrated professionally: empathy. The ability to genuinely consider another person's experience. It gets dismissed in business as too soft, too feelings-focused, but that's a short-sighted view entirely.
Empathy is extraordinarily practical. If you understand what your teammate is experiencing, you communicate with them more effectively, support them more precisely, collaborate more naturally. It makes you better at the actual job, not just a nicer person to sit near. The two things aren't in competition with each other at all.
And alongside empathy sits humility, the willingness to not always need to be the smartest person in the room, to say "I don't know" when you genuinely don't, to acknowledge when someone else's answer is better than yours. That openness, consistently practiced, makes everyone around you more willing to contribute.
And here's the paradox. Paradox meaning something that seems contradictory but is actually true. Humble people are often the most effective on a team because they create space. They listen more, defer when appropriate, give credit generously. All of that makes the whole team stronger, which ultimately makes the humble person more successful too. It works for everyone.
Give credit generously. That's one of those things that costs absolutely nothing but means everything to the person receiving it. When you acknowledge someone's contribution publicly, say in front of others that this was their idea and it made a real difference. That person feels valued, feels motivated, feels seen. And that feeling drives more great work.
And it creates a culture that spreads. When people see contributions acknowledged and appreciated, they're more willing to take risks, share unfinished ideas, put themselves out there. The whole team becomes more innovative. One of the cheapest and most effective tools in any team environment. Just genuinely say thank you.
Let's talk about giving and receiving feedback specifically, because it's one of the most important and most uncomfortable regular moments in any team. Jake, how do you approach giving feedback to a colleague?
Always specific first. Not "this isn't working." That's not useful. It just creates anxiety without direction. But "this section doesn't flow well because the transition is abrupt. Here's what might help." Specific, focused, actionable. Give the person something they can actually do rather than just a general feeling of falling short.
And focusing on the work rather than the person is essential. This report needs a clearer structure, lands completely differently than "you're disorganized." One addresses a specific piece of work, the other attacks identity. That distinction determines whether feedback is received openly or defensively.
And receiving feedback well is honestly just as important as giving it skillfully, because the instinct when someone criticizes your work, even kindly, is to defend yourself immediately, explain your reasoning, point out what they missed. It's a very human reaction, but it closes you off before you've genuinely heard what's being said.
So the practice is listening fully first, without already formulating your response. Let it land, sit with it briefly, then respond thoughtfully. That distinction between responding and reacting matters enormously in feedback moments, specifically. Reacting is immediate and instinctive. Responding is considered and intentional.
And sometimes the feedback genuinely is wrong or based on a misunderstanding. You can absolutely say that, but after you've truly listened and considered. I hear what you're saying, and I want to explain the reasoning here. Lands so differently than jumping to defend yourself before the other person has even finished their thought.
Now, motivation. What keeps people engaged when working collectively? And how is it different from individual motivation?
When working alone, motivation is entirely personal. Your goals, your standards, your drive. On a team, there's an additional social layer. You don't want to let your teammates down. That responsibility to others can be more powerful than personal ambition alone for many people. It's a different kind of fuel.
And beyond interpersonal responsibility, there's the motivation from shared purpose. When a team genuinely believes in what they're working toward, when the why is clear and meaningful, the energy is completely different. People bring more creativity, more effort, more of themselves to work that feels purposeful, rather than purely transactional.
Which is why great leaders spend real time communicating the why, not just assigning tasks, but connecting them to something larger, explaining how this project matters, who it helps, what it makes possible. When people feel connected to the bigger picture, they're contributing to something and that distinction changes everything about how they show up.
You can see and feel the difference between going through the motions, meaning doing something mechanically without real investment, and being genuinely engaged. The quality is different, the energy is different, and that energy is contagious in both directions. Enthusiasm spreads, but disengagement spreads just as fast.
Which is why addressing disengagement matters, not punitively, not as punishment, but with genuine curiosity. If someone seems checked out, ask them honestly, are there ways we can adjust your role to better fit your strengths? Small conversations like that, handled with care, can completely turn someone around before the disengagement becomes permanent.
All right, I want to ask something I think will resonate deeply. If you had to describe in real, vivid terms what it actually feels like to be on a genuinely great team, what would you say?
When a team is truly functioning, and I've been lucky to experience this a few times, there's an ease that settles in, even when the work is hard. Problems feel solvable. Meetings feel productive. People are excited to share ideas because they know they'll be heard. There's laughter, real energy, and this underlying sense that everyone is rowing in the same direction, meaning aligned and moving toward the same goal together.
Rowing in the same direction, such a perfect image. Because in a boat, everyone's effort is connected. You can't separate one person's stroke from the overall movement. If even one person stops rowing, everyone feels it immediately. That's the level of interconnection that great teamwork creates, and it's worth building deliberately.
And when you've felt it, you understand why people talk about their best teams the way they talk about their best friendships. You feel seen, needed, part of something bigger than yourself. That's what makes work feel genuinely meaningful, not just manageable. It's one of the best experiences professional life can offer.
And to anyone listening who feels far from that right now, on a difficult team, struggling with a particular colleague, feeling isolated in a remote setup, that experience is not out of reach. It's built through small, consistent choices, and every single one of those choices is available to you starting right now.
Be the one who listens more carefully. Give credit when someone does something well. Address a misunderstanding before it grows. Ask a struggling colleague how they're really doing. You don't need a title to lead in those ways, and those small acts, accumulated honestly over time, genuinely change the culture around you.
For our listeners learning English, throughout this conversation, we've been using real professional vocabulary and context. Words like synergy, accountability, psychological safety, autonomy, cognitive diversity. These aren't just business terms. They're language tools that let you participate fully and confidently in professional conversations in English.
And the phrases too: pulling your weight, falling through the cracks, going through the motions, rowing in the same direction. These are expressions native speakers use naturally. Hearing them used in real conversation, in context, multiple times, that's how they actually stick. Far better than reading a definition in isolation from any real meaning.
That's exactly how language learning works best. Through exposure, through context, through hearing how things are genuinely said. And that's what this podcast exists to give you. Real living language in a format that's interesting enough to actually keep listening to, which matters more than people sometimes acknowledge.
Listen to this episode a second time, not because you missed something, but because the second listen is where language really starts embedding itself. You've already understood the content. Now you can focus on the how questions get framed, how disagreement sounds respectful, how ideas build on each other naturally in real conversation.
Genuinely great advice. Let's close with practical takeaways, the most useful things from today that you can actually apply whether you're working in a team right now or preparing to do so soon.
First, communicate more than feels necessary. Over-communication prevents most team problems before they even start. Second, extend trust before it's fully earned. Someone goes first, and it might as well be you. Third, give credit generously and often. Fourth, when things get hard, get curious before getting frustrated. Ask why before assuming the worst about anyone.
From my side, invest in relationships, not just tasks. Know your teammates as actual people. Create psychological safety by being the first to be honest. Practice responding rather than reacting, especially in conflict or when receiving criticism. Those habits, applied consistently, will genuinely transform any team you're part of.
And the final one, probably the most important of all, remember that the team's success is your success, not separate from your individual contribution, but because of how that contribution connects to everyone else's. The best thing you can do for your career and your sense of purpose is to genuinely invest in the people working alongside you.
And that captures everything we've been circling today. Teamwork is ultimately not a structure or a strategy. It's a set of daily choices about how you show up, how you listen, how you speak, how you handle difficulty. Small choices that compound invisibly over time into something genuinely remarkable.
Each small act of trust, each honest conversation, each moment you choose curiosity over judgment, it adds up, slowly but surely. And one day you look around and realize you're on exactly the kind of team people dream about being on, and you helped build it. That's not luck. That's the result of those daily choices showing up.
I want to say one thing directly to anyone struggling right now, with English or with a team situation that feels stuck. It's okay. These things are genuinely hard. Struggling doesn't mean failing. It means you're in the middle of the process. And the middle is exactly where growth actually happens.
Not at the beginning when everything feels exciting and new. Not at the end when it's all worked out. In the messy, uncertain middle. That's where you become the person you're working toward being, professionally and personally. Trust that process, especially when it's uncomfortable and unclear.
Trust the process. Invest in the people around you. Choose curiosity over judgment. Communicate honestly and kindly. Every great team was once a group of strangers figuring things out together. You're figuring it out too, and that is genuinely something to be proud of, not something to rush past.
And remember, you have more agency than you think. You're not just a passenger in the team you're on. You're a co-creator of its culture. Every single day, with every interaction, you're shaping what that team feels like to be part of. That's real power, regardless of your title or experience level.
That's everything from us today. I'm Emma, he's Jake, and this has been a conversation I'll be thinking about for a while. To everyone who listened, thank you for spending this time with us. Keep learning, keep showing up fully for the people around you, and never underestimate the difference one person who genuinely cares can make. Until next time.
Take care of yourselves and each other, and go say something genuine and kind to a teammate today. One small act. You would honestly be amazed at what it can quietly start.